I think college is very different now, mainly because of social media. The problem with social media is that a lot of times their parents find out what they're doing as they're doing it. And so there's this void of what I call growth opportunities for them to go and become adults and make some poor choices and learn some life skills without the rescue of their parents.
Yeah.
And they need to experience that on their own.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to More Than Sunday, a weekly podcast where we take a deeper dive into the stories, themes, and questions of our faith. My name is Julie Richter, and I am the lead pastor to Access, our modern worship community here at First United Methodist Church, Richardson. And with me every week is our worship director, Eric Chakowski. How's it going?
Going well.
Good. It's that time of year, you know.
It is.
Yep, graduations.
Which time? Oh, that time. Okay.
Memorial Day?
Oh, okay.
A holiday?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's that time of the year where we are celebrating high school graduations. And I've been connected to the youth here for the last several years. And last year's graduating class and this year's graduating class, I sort of have that happy but sad feeling about their graduation. They've grown so much over the last year, and everything that they've worked towards is all about to come to a culmination in graduation, and then they're all going to go their separate ways and go off to college in the fall. So this week we're talking on the podcast about the things you should know before you go to college.
And I think there's a lot of sort of universal truths to that conversation. I mean, that sort of transition from young adult into more adult as you go to college. I think the lessons that many of us learned sort of at that point in our lives are really good reminders for us, even if we're past that age, or even potentially if we have kids that are entering into that time of their lives, or any number of things. So I think it's going to be a neat conversation no matter what our age or stage of life.
Yeah. So Eric, what was one of the things you wish you would have known before you went to college?
Ooh, I would say I wish I would have
known
a little bit more about how FAFSA works, about how financial aid works with college. I had done a lot of research with my family, and we kind of knew what we were going into. And I was going to a private school. I went to SMU. And so tuition was really high. And what I found out was one of the things that helped me make the decision to go there was I qualified for some grant money, and I thought, oh, good, this is really covering some of the costs. And when I rolled over to my sophomore year, some of that grant money went away, and they replaced it with an offer of loan money. So I went from free money to money I was going to have to pay back.
Yeah.
I thought, wait a minute, I signed on to go to this school because, I thought this was going to be
money.
What I was going to be responsible for. And so I went into the financial aid office, and I was told by the financial aid office that as I get later in my college career that I become more eligible, like it was a prize, I become more eligible for loan-based tuition money. And so I ended up petitioning the School of Music and finding some more scholarship money to help, and found some jobs and some other things that really helped me. But I wish I would have gone in knowing that what you sign up for, and in addition to that, tuition, as is pretty common, went up year after year after year.
Right.
And so the cost that you sign up for at your freshman year isn't always the cost you end with by your senior year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same question for you.
All right. So on a funnier note, I wish I would have known not how to do laundry, but how to pick laundry detergent. I knew
stop.
how to...
Hang on. I feel like that's part of doing laundry is knowing.
It should.
Wait, tell me more about that.
So I did laundry at my parents' house, but the laundry detergent was already there because my parents bought it. And so when I went to the grocery store, I was looking at all the different laundry detergents and decided I was going to pick the one that smelled the best.
That's fair.
And I did. I didn't know that I had picked fabric softener, though. So for the first 6 months of college, I washed my clothes in fabric softener.
Sick.
Well,
I bet they smelled good and were really soft,
really
though.
good. They were very
Just
soft.
not clean.
Just not clean.
At all.
Yeah. So
I'm so grossed
I
out.
know. I'm sorry. I don't do it anymore.
Well, that's good. You've learned.
Yeah. But on a more serious note, I think I wish I would have, it sounds cheesy, believed in myself a little bit more. I was involved in a lot of things in high school, theater and speech and debate and student council, and it was at a small school. And so when I went to a larger school for college, I sort of just decided that I didn't have what it took to do any of that stuff. And I wish that I would have branched out a little bit more, tried some new things, and been okay enough with my skill set and had enough confidence to get into some of that stuff, because once you pass your freshman year, it was harder to get into that sort of stuff later in college. And so I missed some opportunities that I wish I would have taken hold of.
Well, we're really excited today to talk with Rod Bishop. Rod is sought after as somebody who teaches classes on graduating seniors, teaches classes to parents about kids going off to college and sort of being empty nesters, and has a lot of stories and suggestions and wisdom around those kinds of things. And so we're really excited to talk to Rod. Well, we are here with Rod Bishop. Rod is the president of Summit Quest Group Travel Booking and also a former youth director and all-around just wise individual. I was going to say wise guy, but that sounds a little silly. But Rod is a really wise individual, and we're excited to talk to him today. Rod, thanks so much for being here.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
So we're talking this week about things you should know before you go to college. So maybe just starting a little bit with your personal story. Where did you go to college, and what was your experience like?
I went to Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Texas. Recum
Get
Tech.
your guns up.
No, we don't say guns up anymore. We say Recum Tech now.
Recum, okay. But with the gun
But with
symbol.
the gun symbol, yes.
Makes it okay.
It's okay.
So I went to Texas Tech University. I graduated in Lubbock from Coronado High School, and so Tech was the obvious choice for where you go after high school. So I ended up at Texas Tech. I kind of followed this nice young lady that was going there also, and so she was a year behind me in school, and I paved the way in college first off, and then she followed behind, and then we graduated and life began.
That's great. In talking about things we should know before we go to college, very often wisdom comes from experience, and experience from things that we do well and things that maybe we don't do as well. So I like to start on the positive side of things. What do you feel like some things in college that went well for you, that you maybe got right, that you felt like I'm on the right path here, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And yeah, can you share some of those stories?
Yeah, I think the early years of college for me, so I was fortunate that I had the opportunity and experience to pay for my own school going to Tech. And so I learned.
I love how you say opportunity. That's
Positive
awesome.
spin. That's right.
Right.
Opportunities. So I had the opportunity to work during college. One of my semesters, I love to tell this story, but one of my semesters in college, I worked 3 jobs and took 12 hours. And to this day, I still am not sure when I slept, because one of my jobs was an overnight job at a Quickie Mart. And this was way back before Walmart and anything were around 24 hours a day. So there were some really interesting people that came in between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. in the morning. And so
So you took that shift?
yes, I took that shift because I had classes that started at 7:30 in the morning. So I worked the overnight shift, and I could study overnight because it wasn't really that busy. And it was mainly involved in just restocking the shelves, and I could do some studying and then go to class at 7:30 in the morning. So I worked the overnight shift, and then I had classes from 7:30 to like 2:30, and then I had a job at YMCA working with children from 2:30 to 6, and then I had another job that was from 6 to 10, and then I started my other job from 11 to 7 in the morning. So I don't really.
How long did that go on for?
Several months that I can remember. It's all kind of a blur.
I had a similar experience, not to that degree though, but I really do feel like working through college. I actually worked at this church in my junior and senior year of college, 20 hours a week here, but I was a full-time music student and then also taught guitar lessons and gigged around some as well. And I really, we joke about the opportunity to work, but I felt like for my time in college, that was one of the greatest gifts that I had, because it gave me so much real-world experience.
Yeah.
It connected me with so many people that clearly, I'm back on staff here today. That was clearly a really valuable opportunity for experience, for networking, for so many other things. And I really do see that as an opportunity.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it was a great opportunity to teach me work ethic, because I had to balance school and 3 jobs to be able to do everything that was necessary. So one of the great opportunities that I had after that year, that semester of opportunity presented itself, was that I started volunteering at a church, at First Methodist Church in Lubbock. And so I had a youth minister there. She had come to the YMCA camp where I was helping with special needs kids at the YMCA camp. So she had come and met me there, and she said, I think it'd be great to come work in the youth group and stuff. And so that started as a volunteer position, which then turned into an internship at the time. And that's when I really started exploring ministry and how that presented itself. And it also meant that I didn't have to work as many jobs at the time. So
yeah,
I've had a lot of conversations with people who say, I really want to do this for a living. And I've said, well, then go volunteer. Start out, just offer yourself to an organization or to a company, learn the trade or get experience in whatever it is that you're doing and make yourself invaluable to them. And then if they have the funding available, they'll hire you.
One of the great things I like to teach in the senior class, these are seniors in high school, will always say, well, we're just expecting you to give us the religious answer. Like, we're not all going to go into ministry, Rod. That's not what we want to do. And so I always jokingly tell them, no, I've said to youth ministers, to young youth ministers, and also to high school seniors that I think the most important thing for you to do in the world is not to go into ministry. If you're going to go into ministry and God really intends for you to go into ministry, God will call you into ministry. In the meantime, go get a real job. Make yourself valuable at a company. Be productive for your family and be productive for this society until you either feel that calling or you recognize that, hey, I can fulfill my calling to the church through volunteer positions while I work my job during the day.
And quite frankly, we can all be ministers in the jobs that we work.
Right,
I mean, Christ didn't call all of us to go into ministry. He called us to be bankers and carpenters and teachers and nurses and doctors and all kinds of things, but to be ministers in the areas that we are.
And there's just some invaluable skills that you learn no other way but trying something new and having a job that may seem like some mundane tasks. But those are some of the things that I didn't learn in college, but that I learned, at different jobs along the way.
Yes.
By the way, I did not have a job where I lost sleep. I slept fully in the evening and during the day.
And she turned out okay.
I did, but
Yes,
I think that it definitely provided you some opportunities to learn some stuff I learned later.
The gift of sleep.
The gift
Some
of
of us are not blessed with that.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it around now. What were some things that you felt like in college you wish you would have done differently?
Oh, I think I wish I had gotten married earlier in college because the financial aid package that was available was
So romantic.
I know.
We'll tell your wife.
Wow.
I mean, and my edited version of that is, we were so in love, we should have gotten married earlier.
There you go. There you go.
We'll keep it all. Continue.
Yeah.
Because the financial aid package that was available, we were able to get Pell Grants and stuff because we were so poor that we qualified for all kinds of free money at the university and at the university level. And so that was great for us. The other opportunity that presented itself was that because we were living together and studying together and taking some of the similar classes together, that our grades both improved significantly after we got married.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you also have the gift of having a wife who brings out the best in you. And so I think that's even a good remark for those going into college is surround yourself with people that are going to bring out the best in you, who are going to go with you to the library and study and who encourage you to get good grades rather than just to, make other decisions.
So one of the things that I talk to seniors about is we spend an entire lesson on talking about who are the people around you. And so we talk about who are the 4 adults that are not your parents that you can call if you're in trouble, if you need help with grades, if you need financial assistance, or you just need somebody to call that's not your parent.
Rod, you're one of mine, right?
Thank you.
You were one of the phone numbers even when I would stay home by myself that my parents would leave on the fridge just in case I needed anything. But that's good.
Yeah, so the other part of that is to talk about which friend group you run with. So you got the adult group that's going to help you with adult things, but then you also have your peer group. And so I'm a huge advocate for getting involved with organizations, with campus ministry, with fraternities and sororities, with social clubs, with whatever organization suits the needs of those kids that are going off to college so that they can meet a whole different group of people. You don't want to run with the same group of people or you become this homogeneous group that just thinks alike and you all go, oh, yeah, we think we'll eat Mexican food every day. That's a great idea. You need people with different opinions.
Yeah. So Rod alluded to the fact that he speaks to high school seniors fairly often. The main reason we wanted to have this conversation with Rod as a former youth director, Rod is also really sought after just in a lot of circles with high school students in teaching human sexuality and so many other areas of life. And so along those lines, what are some practical things that you think youth need to know before they go to college?
Ooh. budgets. Budgets is usually the first one that we start with. So we talk about budgets and boundaries. And so the budgets and boundary conversation is that, hey, you should talk to your parents about what they really are paying for college, not what you think they're going to pay for, but what they really are going to pay for, and talk about how much money do you think you need? Do you do a budget? I also teach the Generation Change class, which is the Rachel Cruz, who is Dave Ramsey's daughter, has a Generation Change class that's a great opportunity for youth to take. I also teach the Dave Ramsey class, but the Rachel Cruz class is the really fun one because you can help with budget stuff in that class and help them understand, budgets are income minus expenses. Well, when you're in college, most of them don't have income, and so they have to figure out the expenses, and the things that usually sneak up on them are who's going to pay for meals when you're eating out? Who's going to pay for the 95,000 T-shirts that your organization wants you to buy at $10 each or $20 each?
You told me I needed to get involved in organizations.
Yes. So Rod should pay for those.
Yeah, I had a vending machine right outside of my dorm room my second year of college. And the great thing about that vending machine was you could use your ID card and swipe your ID card to get powdered donuts every morning.
Every morning on your way to class. Yes.
On my way to class. And so my parents logged on and were like, why do we have all these $1 charges for powdered donuts? And so I got that conversation of a boundary of, you're paying for your own powdered donuts from the vending machine.
Yes. Yes, and it's great. It's funny because every year you get a different answer from seniors about how much they think it's really going to cost each year. One of the fun parts of teaching this class is that so in the fourth or fifth week, I have college kids who have taken the class come back and go, okay, so you've heard Rod talk for 3 weeks about budgets and boundaries, God, people, roommates, all of those things. Now let us tell you how it really works. And so they always come back and go, $1,500 might be enough when you're here in high school, but $1,500 for your first semester is not going to be enough to get you by if you're paying for T-shirts and eating out and all of the social entertainment stuff that you want to do, the concerts, the football games, all of those things. If that's not included in your financial aid package, then you got to figure that out. So it's always interesting to see how they spend their money.
Yeah.
So talking about students that come back and say, here's how it is today, what do you feel like the struggles are that today's youth deal with that maybe are different from when you went to college?
Oh, since I just went yesterday to college, I mean, it was, I can't imagine it's different at all.
Rod's 22.
Yes.
A recent graduate of Texas Tech.
Recum Tech, recent graduate. I think college is very different now, mainly because of social media. When I went to school, this is going to make me sound really old, but it's the story that I tell to kids also, is that, so when I went to college and you did crazy things or stupid things in college, at worst, your house of people that you lived with, whether that was a dorm room or an apartment or whatever, those were the people who knew about it. And at worst, your parents might find out about it by the end of the semester. Well, the problem with social media now is that a lot of times their parents find out what they're doing as they're doing it. And so there's this void of what I call growth opportunities for them to go and become adults and make some poor choices and learn some life skills without the rescue of their parents hollering in and saying, Julie, I just noticed where you were last night and you can never go into that neighborhood again. That's a bad neighborhood.
Yeah.
And they need to experience that on their own. I think that one of the great things about colleges now is that colleges have really become consumer focused, and so the consumer is the student who's coming to class. And I think when I was in college, we were more of a paycheck and just someone who paid tuition, and they didn't really care if you graduated. And my experience with the kids that I've been teaching and with my own personal kids is that most universities really expect you to graduate and go to great efforts to make sure that you graduate on time and with a degree plan and have some plan for after graduation, rather than, hey, stick around this university and keep paying us as long as you want, and we don't care if you ever get a job.
Yeah. So, Rod, you mentioned earlier you've got one kid who's in college and one that is a graduating senior about to go into college. What are some of the things that you hope that they learn during these formative years of their life?
Ooh, I have so many things I would love for them to hear.
Are they listening?
Are they listening?
You're going to make them listen, right?
Mackenzie and Braden, are you listening now? I think the most important thing that I want our kids to know is that they're loved. And so Cheryl and I have gone to great efforts to make sure that our kids feel that they're loved and that they're able to make mistakes, grow and learn, and that there is nothing that our children can do that would make us stop loving them. So that's the primary thing for us. There are a lot of life skills, and you might be surprised to know this, we have a checklist of things that we like for our children to learn before they get out of the house. Simple things like how to change a tire.
Literally, in my brain, I thought that's going to be number one on the list.
How to change a tire.
How to change a tire. So the one that Mackenzie loves right now is Braden and I drive Jeeps, and so they're both standards. And Cheryl knows how to drive a standard. I know how to drive a standard. Braden knows how to drive a standard. Mackenzie's like, I don't need to know how to drive a standard. When am I ever going to need to learn? I said, that's a life skill that you have to learn in this house before you leave. So she has learned to drive a standard. If you see a big black Jeep with a little blonde driving it, move out of the way.
Move out of the way. But I mean, when she goes abroad and ever has to drive a car in Europe somewhere, she might have to know that.
Most of the cars I've rented in Europe have been standards. Yeah.
So we like to teach them just fun life skills like that. So, be loved first, be a productive member of society. No matter what you do, no matter where you end up in your world or your job or your profession or whatever, be a productive member of society and move the world into a better place when you leave it than it was when you came into this. We talk a lot about relationships with our kids to say to them, even when you break up with a boyfriend or girlfriend, we want you to leave them in a better place than when you started the relationship. It's really hard for adults. It's really, really even harder for teenagers to think about leaving their ex in a better place than where they were when they began.
Right. Well, because you're facing the reality that not all relationships are forever. And so if they're not, then how do you want to leave them?
Yes.
And yeah, that's certainly hard to learn as an adult, but more difficult as a teenager.
And as Gloria told us before on one of the podcasts, people are difficult.
Yes. Yeah, you can't control how.
Yes. So we have a lot of conversation about boundaries and how to draw boundaries and how to be healthy in a relationship. And that sometimes the best thing to do is to just move away from that relationship and let that toxic person go be somewhere else, but to protect yourself in those situations.
Yeah. One of the most important things my parents taught me was the acronym for COPE. Have you heard that one? So C, what do you control? What do you not control? What are you obligated to? What are you not obligated to? What's personal and what's not, which was really important for me to distinguish, to not take everything so personally. And then what are you going to give your energy to and what are you not going to give your energy to? And I think that that's really helpful in terms of boundaries of what is just not worth all of the energy that you are putting towards.
Right. And that's a hard one for, it's a hard one for adults, but it's also hard for adolescents to learn where you put your energy. If you put your energy into negative situations and negative relationships, then you're allowing that person to control your energy. And so that's the COPE is a great skill. Yeah. You must have wise parents.
I must have wise parents.
So
I hope they're
wise.
listening.
So, Rod, most of our listeners are not college students. They're not graduating seniors. So what lessons can we learn from the advice that you're giving about college and life transition?
Funny that you should ask, because the other complementing series that I get to teach is the Empty Nester class to moms and dads. And it's been interesting because in the past I taught the class together, and what I learned over time is that those are two very separate groups. Dads and moms deal with separation from their children very differently. And not to be stereotypical male or female, but there are things that dads need to hear about their children departing and things that moms need to hear about their children departing. And so one of the great things that we do in the class, and it's always kind of taken parents by surprise, is that we ask the kids to write letters to their parents each week. So no, really, sit down with a pen and paper and write a letter. Don't text your mom, but write a letter. And so one of the things that I do with parents also is to say, write a letter to your kid, handwritten letter to say what you mean to them, what your hopes and dreams are for them, and what you value about them. All the positive things that you love about your child that you want them to hear as they go off into college. And then the second important thing is to let your children go off and be in the world. College is a relatively safe place for them to go and make mistakes and learn to be an adult. The thing that I talk with both groups about, both the high school seniors and the parents, but more importantly the parents, is that the senior year is the most challenging time for both sets of people, because you have parents that are going through the grieving process of, oh my gosh, Julie's leaving for college, and all of the things that I haven't done up to this point, I need to hold her close, and I want to hold on to her like she's a little baby and never let her move away. And then you have Julie, who's the senior, who's going, independence, I'm out of here, forget this, I want no rules, party on. And so that usually comes down about this time of year. April and May is when you get to see a lot of those big fights, and it's a grieving process for parents when their kids move off. And I've taught this to adults for 20 years, and until I personally experienced it myself, it's just beyond words. I tell the funny story of dropping Braden off at college. So Braden's off to college, and we're taking 2 cars because he drives a Jeep, and you can't pack anything in a Jeep. So we take 2 cars everywhere. So we're getting ready to leave, and I said, well, I'll ride with you because Mom's just going to cry for 3 hours if we go there. So he says, okay, that's great. And, I said, I don't do crying. We're just going to move on. Let's get in the car. We literally pulled out of the neighborhood, and I sobbed. I mean, uncontrollable sobbing. And we weren't even at the first stoplight. And Braden said, is it going to be 3 hours of this? And I said, I don't know. This is what grief does to you. I'm not a crier, and I can't even stop. I don't even know what these things are. What's this water coming out of my face?
Oh, man. Yeah. Well, and that grieving I think it hits different people at different times. That for some, it's not until we are in the car and we are headed down that it hits. And, and then for others, it's in the middle of every last. And it's in the anxiety of every last. Your last first day of school, your last prom, your last banquet, your last football game or marching contest. And those lasts can just build to this place that causes a lot of grieving that comes out in some interesting ways I don't think we're always aware of.
Yeah, and I think that the last that you talk about are the transitions that I think are important for both sets, for both parents especially, to be able to transition into the next stage of life. And my hope for couples as they send kids off to college, whether it's your first or your last kid to college, is that you reevaluate your relationship with each other. And I hope that parents have been able to be a couple first before they were parents. And that's a different class that we teach. But I hope that couples are able to continue that relationship with each other, and that the child going off to college is a great experience, but it doesn't change the relationship. I do have one funny story. It's not a funny story. It's actually kind of a sad story. So we have some really good friends that had both of their children, great children, very successful people now. The parents were very successful, and we were good friends. And the day that the last kid moved off to college, they had us over for dinner to say, hey, we're getting a divorce. We just wanted to let you know. We were shocked. Cheryl and I were totally shocked. And they said, we haven't been in love for 10 years, but we committed to raise these children. And we're both business people. We just signed a contract, and this is what we did. We raised our children, and we raised our girls well, and they're successful people. Our contract is over. We're moving on. Within 6 months, both of them were remarried. There was no animosity, but because they identified as, we're going to be parents, and that's going to be what our role is, that they lost the how to be a couple together. And it was shocking to me and shocking to Cheryl and I both, because somebody that we had been so intimately involved with would suddenly, hey, this was just a contractual thing, and we just severed the contract and we moved on.
Wow. So what is that supposed to teach your kids that are going off to college now?
Right. Well, and the hard part, and what I've added to the parent session, is that the hard part of that is that both children of that couple were emotionally distraught for a long time afterwards, because they said, we feel like you've lied to us our entire childhood. You didn't love each other. You put on this facade that you loved each other, and you didn't really. And it's created some difficulties in relationships for both of them. So they're doing better now, but it's taken a lot of counseling to do that. And so I think that was an unexpected consequence that the parents didn't realize. Oh, we created some real counseling situations here for these kids. Wow.
What a hard story to hear, but a really important lesson for us about how we treat our relationships and the way in which we see one another and interact with one another, not just for our kids, but for our own relationship as well, to give us insight into how we might treat one another and where we want our relationships to be long term. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
So, Rod, we have one more question that we ask every guest that comes on the podcast. At this point in your life, what is one thing you wish someone would have told you?
Ooh, the one thing I wish someone had told me. Enjoy the journey. Learn from your mistakes. learn from your successes, and enjoy the people that are around you. Surround yourself with people who love you. Surround yourself with people who will challenge you, and be the best person that you can be. I think for me, if someone had said early on, make this world a better place after you leave than when you got here. You want to be a plus one and not a negative one in this world.
Well, Rod, thanks so much for sharing your wisdom, insight, stories. I'm going to want that checklist of things to teach your kids before they leave the house. But we really appreciate your time today.
Yes, you're welcome. Glad to be here.
So Rod reminded us today that there are so many helpful things that we can do to be prepared, not only just for college, but for other moments of our lives that are difficult, to know when tough times come about, to be able to lean on the people around us. But what Rod said that has really stuck out to me is to remember that we are loved, to remember that even when we mess up, we are loved by the people around us and ultimately by God. I want to leave you today with a scripture from Jeremiah. It's called the Call of Jeremiah, and it's words that God is giving to Jeremiah as Jeremiah is beginning his ministry of what he will go on to do as a prophet. Here's what the scripture says. The word of the Lord came to me saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Alas, sovereign Lord, I said, I do not know how to speak. I am too young. But the Lord said to me, do not say I am too young. You must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you and I will rescue you, declares the Lord. Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, I have put my words in your mouth. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and tear down and destroy and overthrow and build and plant.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of More Than Sunday. We have a new episode coming out every Wednesday, so make sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or YouTube so you don't miss our next episode. If you want to find out more about the Access community here at First United Methodist Church Richardson, find us online at accessfumcr.com, as well as on Facebook and Instagram. Special thanks to Rod Bishop for joining us this week, and make sure you tune in next Wednesday when we have a conversation with Carl Smith about leadership and spiritual gifts. Have a great week.